Okay, so this is an introduction to easiestprogramminglanguage.com, which is about Rebel, which really is the easiest programming language to learn. Beginners can start with it in about a minute. Professionals can use it to do really complex work. Even children can learn it. It's a little tiny download. The tutorial here shows you where to go. Click on this link. It'll bring you to the Rebel website. Choose your operating system. I'm on Windows here, so I'm going to download the Windows version. When you install Rebel, you want to install it as administrator, so run as administrator. And you don't really actually have to install Rebel to use it. You can just download it and run it, but we'll go ahead and install it here. You can choose to add a desktop icon. You can choose your file locations. The temporary files, be careful where you install that. When you uninstall, there's an option to delete that. If you choose a directory where there are already existing files, those files will get deleted if you delete the temporary directory when you uninstall. So just be careful about where you put it. Best to accept the defaults. Rebel program looks like this. To start using the Rebel interpreter, you're going to click on console, but I'm going to show you a couple things here you can do. You want to uncheck this open desktop on startup option, save that. You might also want to put your email settings in. The tutorial shows you how to do that. Click on the console here, and next time when you run the Rebel interpreter, it'll come straight up to the interpreter, the console, instead of the view top. You can always get that view top back by pressing desktop if you want it. To start going here, you type in editor none. That'll bring up Rebel's internal editor. It's a simple little editor. And we're going to type a little program here. To type any program into the Rebel editor, you need to type Rebel with a couple of square brackets, and then you can type your code. We're going to type alert hello world, and what that does, if you press the F5 key, and you can get some help here about how to use the editor, the F5 key or Control E will run your program. You can save your program by default. When you press the F5 key, it's going to come up with a little dialog here to save your file. By default, it's called temp.txt. You can call it whatever you want. And there's your first program. Pops up a little alert that says hello world. And that whole process here is described in the tutorial. It shows you the whole run through. You do the install, click on the console, type editor none, you get the editor, type in your code into the editor, press F5, save the file. And in most cases, whenever you're doing any sort of saving, you're going to want to click on Allow All when you're running Rebel programs. It's a little security requester. It ensures that other people can't run programs that you don't want them to run, and you'll get your program. You already saw this. You want to make sure you uncheck the open desktop on startup so you can get right into the Rebel editor. Put in your user information for your email. You'll also want to save this code with your username and password into a file called rebel.r. Anything that's saved in that little rebel.r file will automatically run every single time the Rebel interpreter starts. And you can edit that just by, again, typing the word editor, and then this little % means file. You're going to edit that rebel.r file. Copy and paste that code and save it, and that way you can use email. You've already seen a little bit. Now this is the guts of the introduction here. It's all about these little programs. You've already seen this one little program, alert hello world. If you want to send mail in Rebel, you use the send command. Put the email you want to send to and the text you want to send here. And connect. I have my information, my personal information, and that email has been sent. You can see the Rebel interpreter starts really quick. For example, if you want to read email, you can use this little write function and write it to a file and read whatever is in a certain POP mail account. Put your username in the website. It'll download your entire email box and store it in that file. If you want to read that, you can either do a print read that file, or you can type the word editor, and that Rebel's editor will come up and read you all of your email. I'm going to avoid doing that right now just because that can take a while if the inbox is full. Here's a good example. This shows you some other things you can do with Rebel. This little command will subtract the number of days from the start date. It'll take an end date and subtract that start date and print the result. So between 24th of January 2013 and the 17th of February in 1972, there were 14,952 days. There are a number of other examples like that here. If you want to figure out how many days there were between today and a certain date, use the word now for the current date and time. That will show you the actual number of days. And what you want to do here is try to change some of these code examples. The idea is to see how these things work, get used to reading Rebel code. I'm going to type my birth date in, and I've been alive today 14,896 days. Fun way to get used to how Rebel works. Rebel has a lot of these little requesters built in. There's a thing called request date, and here if we print the result of one request date minus another request date, it's going to let us actually subtract two dates that are selected by the user. So if I want to do March 13th minus March 9th, it's 22 days. And actually, it's the 13th is a different number there. So you notice Rebel can do these calculations really easily. It can also, for example, do time calculations. This will print out the difference between 10:30 p.m. and 5:18 a.m. So there's 17 hours and 12 minutes difference between those two times. This example would print the current time minus 8 a.m. You can also see that a number of useful coordinates, for example, 23 over and 12 down minus 34 and 12 down will give you the difference in position. And Rebel has a lot of these built-in values. So 23 by 12 minus 34 by 12 XY positions gives you this difference. So it makes it really easy to do graphic movements and things like that. You can see you can subtract or add or multiply tuple values. And Rebel also knows how to deal with certain kind of values appropriately. If you're dealing with numbers, you're going to want an exact fractional. Amount, and you'll see here 29.99 divided by 7 gives you this decimal amount. If you're dealing with money, you're not going to want that kind of fraction. You want an actual dollar and cent value, and Rebel knows how to do that stuff basically just by the way the data is formatted. There are a bunch of these other requesters here. You've already seen alert hello world. This join word is really important when you want to concatenate or join together values. That lets you do it. There's also a rejoin for a lot of values. This is going to join the text current date and time, and it's going to put the actual current date and time, which is always the word now. Put that in. Current date and time is 9th of March 2013, 9:56 a.m. And put some of these other requesters in. So you've already seen the request date. There's a password requester, a text requester. Text requester has a bunch of these options, and these are called refinements. This little example will, this little example has a refinement that allows you to put in a title in the requester, and in that title, the text "What is your name?" will appear. So we get a dialog that allows us to request from the user their name. And you can see a bunch of these requesters. If you run those lines of code, you'll get these little pop-ups that allow you to, for example, pick files, or choose from a list of items, or choose a color. This is a little example that shows a couple of these requesters and dialogues. This is going to alert the joined together text, this basic text, together with whatever is requested from the user. So this is going to pop up a little requester, and this see it. Let's copy this. You'll see it come up with requester, and you can type in an example candy, and it'll alert that my favorite thing is candy. So it's joined together that text with whatever was requested from the user. You'll notice that I'm typing in all of these things into the Rebel console directly. There's a bunch of these single liners. If you want to browse a website, you just type in the name of the website, and again, Rebel knows what to do with that URL whenever it sees an HTTP or an FTP or any of those sorts of URL strings. It just knows what to do. So this is going to pop up my browser. It's going to open the browser to that website, and you can also, for example, request a URL from the user with the default name already in there. You can run command line programs. There are a bunch of examples here. This will let us run Notepad with the default config sys in there. You can allow all for any of these sorts of things. There you see it run Notepad. And use this little line here to play sounds. Code like that is very simple. Just copy and paste it. One single line of code lets you place this. You can hear that sound played. You can read from the system clipboard or write to the system clipboard. For example, if we want to do run this is actually going to write to the clipboard this text. I should open Notepad here. I'm going to open a copy of Metapad. Now, if I do a file and paste, there it is. It was on the system clipboard. A whole bunch of other useful computing types of operations. You can compress data very simply with the word compress. You can decompress also with the word decompress. Rebel knows how to read a lot of these standard protocols. Here I can get the DNS information for msn.com. That'll print the IP address of msn.com. You can read websites. You can read FTP accounts. Put your username and password in, and you can read, for example, the daytime protocol. There are a variety of these protocols built in. Fingers, things like that. So we've just got the time from this particular time server. You can also write directly to a lot of these protocols. You can write to the clipboard. This will write to the clipboard whatever is read from that website. And the editor will actually let you read and write. So if I want to edit what's in the clipboard, I can use the word editor on the clipboard, and that'll let me not only read the clipboard information but also edit it and save back to the clipboard. You can do the same thing with a file that's requested from a user. I can also do the same thing with a website. Be careful with this one. If you actually edit a page on your website, it will change that live page and let you edit and save back to it directly. There's a variety of other things. I have some examples here. You can compute checksums, replace text, split text, trim text, convert between different encodings. You can decrypt data, encrypt data. This is a little function that will parse data that's been submitted from a website form. And it's really amazing what you can do. There are hundreds of those kinds of functions built in to Rebel. But where it really gets interesting, in Rebel especially, is the ability to create windows. You combine some of these functions with the ability to create windows and widgets, and you can do some amazing things. The words view layout are used to create a window, and here you can see I'm creating a window size 600 by 440, and that's it. You put it inside a block, and here you can see I get a little window, 600 by 440 pixels across, or 640 across by 440 down. Adding widgets to a window is this easy. Now we're going to start doing some multi-line programs here, so I'm going to put it in the Rebel editor. We're going to go back and do what we did in the beginning. Editor, none. This means we're going to start with no file, just a blank file. And you can see I've got a header up here, a little title, titled it widgets. I have the view layout words, a little block here now, and these widgets, a field, an area, it's a text field, a text area, a little text list, an image. This is the built-in logo.gif, it's GIF that's in Windows, and a button, push button. Press the F5 key and it runs. Again, you can save it using the default temp.txt, or you can call it, for example, let's call this one widgets.r. Put it on our desktop. And whenever you name a file a .r extension, what it will do is allow you to click on that file. It's the running program. You can see we have a field, an area, text list, an image, and a button. And those are working widgets. Got minimize and close buttons with the title that you put up here. Very, very simple to create windows with Rebel. And if you look at the desktop here, this little file with Rebel installed, and you saw how quick it was to install Rebel, you do click on that and it runs just like an executable program. You don't have to have an editor or anything else. And you could use any editor. I like Metapad in Windows, but the built-in Rebel editor works fine. Later on I'll show you some advancements in terms of using editors to do more helpful things. To get your programs to do useful things, you can have widgets perform actions. And I can see here I still have a view layout. Go to title, call this widgets live. There's a field. Now in the field it's going to have some default text that says type here. And after that field I have a block, a little square dot block. And we've got, you can see the alert function. We're going to join the words you typed with whatever value is typed into the field here. Use that word value to refer to any data that's in a widget. Text list that has this initial list of data 1, 2, 3. And when anything from that list is selected, we're going to join you selected and the selected value. Here the text widget has this text. This little character here means a new line, multi-line text, and whenever we do something with that area, it's going to just alert the text that's in there. Here's an image. When we click on it, it's going to alert you. Click the nice logo, and we have the button widget with the words "click me" on it this time, and it will alert you. Click the button. So let's run that. And you get now, it looks like an actual program. Type here, and we get the alert. You typed the text we typed. If I click on this, you selected number 2. If I select number 1, it's going to say you selected 1. Type here in the multi-line text. Just give ourselves a little bit of text here. And tab away from that. And you can see it shows us the text we typed. Click on the image. Click the nice logo. And you click on the button. Click the button. So that's starting to approach something that looks like a real program. And in fact, at this point you know enough really to start doing some real programming. Here's a little example, and what this does, it's going to create a CSV file. This is a typical kind of file that's used for spreadsheets and a lot of other kind of business applications. You could adjust this little program to save contact information, to create a business application, for example, that would store inventory items or save sales receipts. And take a look at this. What this is, again, you have a title. We're calling this text field saver. There's the view layout words that creates the window. And we have one field. We're labeling that F1. You can see the little colon there is what Rebel uses to label items. It's a variable now. F1 is going to relate to a field. F2 is now going to refer to this other field. And then we're going to have a button with the word save field on it. And when that's clicked, we're going to run all this stuff. What we're going to do is write to this file, fields.csv. We're going to append to that file instead of overwriting it. Whatever is joined here, and it's going to be the text in F1, a comma, the text in F2, and a new line. And after that's done, we're going to alert the user with the text saved. So let's copy that. Go in, and if you look here, you can press the up arrow to cycle through all of the things you've typed into the console. I'm just going to type editor none again. Paste that, press the F5 key, and this little tiny program is basically what it looks like in the code. You have a window, view layout, you have a field called F1, a field called F2, there's your button, the word save fields on it, and when you click that button, it's going to just type some text here, some random text, and save the fields. It's now written to that file, and it's alerted the user. If I do this again, let's have some more data into that field. Now it's saved. And if we go back into Rebel, I'm going to edit that file, fields, CSV, and you can see we've actually written, I did some previous examples here, but this is what we just entered. So that's a useful little program that you can use to save data. The rest of this tutorial is basically more examples. Here's a little program. Again, you've got a view layout. This time it has some text. You can see the text email right here with a colon, and a field with some default email address, or text with an actual text message. Then there's an area, which is there's an area with a label, calling that area down here A, and then a button with the word send on it. And when that button is clicked, it's going to run this bit of code. It's going to send to whatever email is in that field, whatever text is in the A area, and then we're going to alert the user with a message that says it's been sent. Let's run this. Just copy the Let's do this again. Copy. And paste that, and you can see you get a running program here. This, and this will actually, I can't see the type. There we go. And, you know what, we'll send this to a place where you can reach me, nick at com-pute.com. That's compute.com with a little dash in the middle. Send it, and I will get that email in my email box, which I can actually read in Rebel if I want. Okay, here's a nice little game. You've probably seen this game before. Again, you can see the familiar title. There's a view layout. A couple little things here that show us how to space this. We're going to have no spacing in between the widgets. And we're going to lay them out across. And we're going to create a new little style. It's a new widget, which we're going to call P, style P, which is just a button, 60 by 60 pixels across. And I have some code here. Basically, this just checks to make sure that the button you're clicking on is within 60 pixels of the little empty button. And then it does some switching. It takes the offset or the position of the current face, and it changes that with the button down here, which is called X, that little white button. And then it swaps them. And then we have a bunch of these buttons, P with the letters O and N and so on. Let's try running that. And the tutorial here gives you a bunch of ideas about what to do with these, just to see, dig in the code a little bit, and try using the code. Here's the running program. This is the classic 15 tile. You just click on the buttons, and it won't let you. One of those lines, this first thing, if you're not within 60 pixels on every side, it won't let you run the button code, because you don't want to be able to swap pieces. You only want to be able to slide in. You could do some things, for example, like try changing all these to numbers, or even images. You could create images to be on each of those buttons. You can see in the tutorial I suggest some things like that to try changing the letters. I'll give you an idea of how to dig into this code. Here's a cool little example. Notice the similarities. Got a URL here. We're going to define this variable as this URL where we find an image. Got view layout again. We're creating a window, and in that window we're going to put an image that's 640 by 480. This is sort of boilerplate code that you use to check to see if something is happening, if a timing event is happening. And if that timing event happens, what we're going to do here is change the image in that window to whatever is loaded from the URL, and then we're going to show it. And what that'll do is create a video stream. we go. And you can see this is actual live running video. See the changes taking place here. That's a live running video stream from this camera. Really, really, really simple to do in Rebel. And I'm amazed at some of the things you can do in Rebel. Here's a little tiny paint program. There's a lot of boilerplate code in this. Run the editor here again. I'm just using the up key to get that previous thing I've typed. And F5. Save it, run it, and this lets you paint on the screen. Clear it. And the whole program, you can change, for example, the colors. Let's do that. Let's say we want to change this to purple. I want to change the area to purple. Run it. Now we've got another color. Make little changes like that. Try changing, for example, the size. We'll make it 500 by 400 across. Run it, and now you can see you've got a different size area. You could do things, for example, by like saving the image. There are a bunch of these examples in the larger tutorials, but this is just to give you a little introduction. You can see this is very small. We've got a thing we called S, which is an area. It's white. Here's some more of this boilerplate code. This just checks to see if things are happening. If the action that's happening isn't over, then we're going to append some stuff to the window. And if it's an up, we're going to do some other things. And then we have a button with the word clear on it. And if that gets pressed, basically we're going to reset this whole draw block that's on this area. Very, very simple to do in Rebel. I go into really, really deep detail in some of the other tutorials about how exactly all this works. Here's an even simpler example. You saw already how you could calculate days between. And what this does is it's got a window. There's a button that's 200 pixels across with the word start on it. And when it's clicked, it's going to set its own text to whatever date is requested from the user. It's also going to set a variable called S to whatever is requested from the user. Got another button here that's got the word end on it, and when that's pressed, it's going to set its text to whatever is requested from the user and set this variable E. And then we're going to change also this field's text to this date, the E minus the S date, and show it. And you can see there's a little bit of text here that says days between and a field. And so this little program is really, really simple to do. If you've never even seen Rebel code before, you can probably follow that code fairly easily just by reading through it. You don't need to learn a lot about object-oriented programming or really about anything else. A lot of these words just make sense. Selecting a date here, you can see it's showing up now on the button, and it's calculated the date. So let's go back here. And some of these other examples. Here's a little calculator application. Most of this code is just the buttons that are on the face of the window. We're creating a program with calculator in the title bar. Here's the window view layout. We've got, again, origin and spacing. We're setting this to be a really tight thing, just like in the game. Laid across. We create a new style called button, which is just a button that's 50 by 50 pixels. And you can see there's a field, a couple little lines of code here that actually do the calculation. But most of this is just buttons with the text, the numbers, and the operators. The return word just starts a new line. And put that into the editor, run it, and you can see it's like 9 lines of code maybe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, about 9 lines of code, and you've got a working, functional calculator. Continuous calculations. And of course, you can actually type right in here if you want. And it will calculate what you typed. And in the bigger tutorials, I've got some examples of how you can use a calculator like that to do really unusual things that you can't do with any sort of handheld calculator. We've got one that downloads monetary values, conversion values between all the different country types of money, and it'll convert numbers that you've calculated. There's a little jukebox. You've already seen how you can play a single file. This adds a bunch of directory selecting features and a nice little GUI. It takes the WAV files and it only basically removes any file that's not got the suffix WAV on it. And it lets you play these files in a GUI. In here. It's nice to have multi-line programs run in the editor. So I can allow all for anything, and you can click on this and I don't know if you can hear that. You can select a new directory if you want. So on. There's some error checking in there too. If you take out this attempt, basically there are some things in here that could break the program. For example, if you try and play two songs at the same time, it's going to have an error because you're trying to play in that same port, the same file. So I put a little attempt in there, and it won't. If there's an error, it'll just continue going and won't crash the program. Here's a cool little game. This is actually a really compact program, and what it does, it's quite a bit of functionality in here. What you do is you play you use the space bar to move your piece backwards, side to side, and catch the pieces. And what happens is it keeps count of everything you've caught, and once you get to the point where you've missed more than you've caught, the game's over. And the thing is, it speeds up as it goes along. So I'm going to kind of time how this works, and you can see your score is the amount of time that you're able to stay alive. And it starts moving really quickly here. I'll let this die because I want to show you it's got a in that little bit of code, it's got the ability. I'll let this run out here. It's got the ability here to save and display high scores, and this program is a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 lines long. I caught a bunch here, so I gotta wait for myself to lose, and you'll see that the name pops up when you've done more losses, and there's my score. Actually, I have the high score, 1 minute and 14 seconds, and this actually doesn't just show a high score, it shows a sorted list, so the smallest numbers at the top and the highest numbers down at the bottom, and that's all within this little, all the collision detection, all of the movement, all of the calculation of the score, all of the controls, everything, all the display of the GUI window, everything is in this one little tiny bit of code. That one's a little more complicated to understand right away, but again, I go into full descriptions about how all this stuff works. Little time math tester, really simple to understand. It's going to create some random numbers. We want to seed that. I usually use just the current time to seed the random number generator. And creating a little function here called question. It's basically just going to put together some random numbers. You can limit the number to, for example, the number 10, between 1 and 10. This is going to limit to 1 and 20. You've got a window with a field, some text, another field that when you click on it, this is where you type your answer. When you type on it, it's going to do a little calculation here, and if it's right, it's going to say yes. If it's wrong, it's going to say no. Let's try that. Pressing F5 here. Run it. And here's the math test program. So 3 plus 15 is 18, if I can click it right. Tells me yes. gives us a new one, generates a new one. If I type 3 plus 12 is 2, it's going to say no. And I've got some more advanced versions of this later in the tutorial. I'll show you how to do some cool things like show a smiley face if it's correct. Here's a little insult generator. And you can see it's really, really simple to do some things that would be much more complicated in other languages. In other languages, you typically have to choose a GUI toolkit, and it's going to take you a good a couple months to really learn how to do things like this. This one has, for example, you can see right here, it's got this random generator, a window, and in that window there's a text area with this text in it called X. There's a text area with this text in it called Y. There's a button with the word insult on it, and we're going to alert the user some join text that says you're a. We're going to pick a random bit of text that's parsed from here, and a space, and then a random bit of text that's parsed from the Y, and that'll generate incompetent halfwit or very clumsy dolt. And actually, I changed this on the website to make it a compliment generator, and kids really eat up the insult generator. I want to show a program to a kid, they'll love that. Let's refresh this. And you'll see I've got a nice compliment generator that's even a little bit nicer. There we go, compliment generator. That's what's currently on the site. Okay, and Rebel can do an enormous number of things with graphics that are really useful. This little tiny program demonstrates just a few of them. And what you get here is, again, very easy to read in the code. You got a window, image effects on the top and the title bar, and we're going to label this image, which is loaded from this place on the web. I'm going to label it pic and picture, and then we have a text list with some data in it. The data is all of these words, which are effects that you can use in Rebel. It's just a little handful of effects. And when that text list is clicked on, what's going to happen is we're going to change the effect of the picture to whatever the value is selected here, and then we're going to show the picture. So this will actually do a bunch of different effects, and there are a ton of these. Very easy to use in code. Just use the word effect, and you put a value. You put a, if you want to make it Luma 20, you can do that just by using the word Luma 20. If you want no effect, use the word none. Really simple and easy to code this sort of stuff in Rebel. Dead simple. Okay. Rebel has a bunch of other graphics capabilities. It has a draw dialect built in, and this little dialect. Explain here. And again, there's some more kind of cruft code. You just have to sort of memorize this boilerplate code. We're going to put a box on the screen that's 400 by 400, but you can make this area whatever you want in size. Make it black, and to make a draw, to draw an image, you need to use this effect word, and you put the word draw. That lets you use the draw dialect, and you can see the draw dialect is very easy. We're going to change the pen to red. We're going to draw a line from this point to this point. Then we're going to change the pen to white, draw a box using those parameters. Then we're going to make a fill pen, so whatever we draw next will be filled green. It's going to be a circle, those parameters. And then we're going to make the pen blue and fill it with orange, whatever we draw next. We'll change the line width to 5. We're going to create a multi-pointed image and a polygon with those parameters. You can see that draws. That draws exactly what the code shows. Really, really simple to do. And again, you've created the window. You put a black box, 400 by 400. You've done all these changes to the pen, and very, very simple. You can change all those things programmatically using loops and other typical programmatic options. Doing things like gradients are very, very easy. You can see here we've drawn We've drawn a couple polygons, a couple little rectangular type things, and we've made a gradient on here. This is really, really simple to do. Created a window to put it in, and so on. So really easy to do stuff like this in Revit. Let's see what we got here. Oops, managed to not copy the whole thing. Let's put a little header really quick. There you go. It creates a little 3D cube. Okay. And there are tons of things you can do with the draw dialect. It does images really, really easily. So you can see some of these, still got the black box. Here I've added a few options. I want no title bar on this one. You can see we're going to have no title bar. This one's going to take an image, the built-in logo again that you saw earlier, and it's going to adjust the positioning, and it will automatically makes the image contort and fit. I've also made the layout tight so there's no extra spacing around this image. We get a nice little kind of display here. Put her up. It doesn't have any borders or any extra junk in it. Pops up on screen. There we go. And since there's no borders, you need to use Alt F4 to keystrokes to close a window. There's a little cool paint program. I didn't put the code here, but this little paint program, really powerful. You can put images in it, and so on. It's only 238 lines of code. Like quite a few using both raw dialect called R3. It's really nice and easy to use, and it compresses down to about a page of code. This example, this is more of a useful example, uses a dialect called RebGUI. It's much like the built-in vid dialect that we use to create GUIs. I'm doing this bit from a website, but you can paste this code directly into the program. I'm just doing it from the web. It's a little bit options. We're going to maximize. You can have a menu text area, basic function. Do the business. Remember this point. We will do the business stuff next. Stay tuned for tutorial number 2.